So Scott Moe and Danielle Smith have apparently been having backroom chats about building a pipeline to BC's north coast, and David Eby found out the same way you find out your ex is engaged, through the grapevine. Welcome back to Canadian Insights, where political drama gets messier than a Tim Hortons drive-thru at 8 a.m. on a Monday. Picture this: you're minding your own business, running a province, trying to balance economic growth with environmental commitments and Indigenous reconciliation, when suddenly you hear that your neighboring premiers have been plotting to send oil tankers through your waters without even giving you a heads up. That's essentially what happened to BC Premier David Eby this week, and let me tell you, he is not happy. In fact, he told CBC he almost fell out of his seat when he heard Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe casually mention he'd been part of conversations about a new pipeline to British Columbia's north coast. You know it's bad when a politician admits to almost falling out of their seat. That's the political equivalent of saying I can't even right now. Here's the tea: according to senior government sources, the federal government and Alberta have been cozying up to sign a memorandum of understanding on a new pipeline that would funnel oil to BC's northern coast and allow tanker traffic in areas currently protected by a federal ban. Right now, there's a rule that says oil tankers can't carry more than 12,500 metric tons of crude oil through BC's north coast waters. It's basically a no heavy oil tankers allowed sign, and it exists for pretty good reasons involving environmental protection and Indigenous rights. But apparently, some folks think exemptions might be a great idea, and they forgot to invite BC to the planning committee. Now, let's talk about why Eby is treating this like someone just suggested putting pineapple on poutine. It's not just about being left out of the loop, though that's definitely part of it. Eby is worried about what he calls a fragile consensus around major resource development in British Columbia. Here's the thing: BC currently has 4 times more major projects on the table than any other province in Canada. 4 times. That's not because they're handing out project approvals like candy at Halloween. It's because they've managed to build relationships with First Nations communities, many of whom have agreed to support these projects specifically because of the oil tanker ban. Let me break this down. Coastal First Nations have said, okay, we'll work with you on these developments, but the oil tanker ban stays. That's non-negotiable. It's the foundation of trust that's allowed BC to move forward with an ambitious development agenda while respecting Indigenous sovereignty and environmental concerns. So when Alberta and Saskatchewan start whispering about exemptions to that ban, it's not just rude to leave BC out of the conversation, it's potentially catastrophic for every single project that depends on that trust. Eby dropped an absolutely perfect analogy that I need to share because it's chef's kiss level good. He said that carving out exemptions to the tanker ban is like explaining to a vegetarian that they'll still be a vegetarian if they eat a few steaks. Brilliant. Savage. Accurate. You can't have it both ways. You can't tell coastal communities, don't worry, we banned oil tankers to protect your waters, and then turn around and say, but what if we allowed just a little bit of oil tanker traffic? Just a smidge. That's not how trust works. That's not how bans work. And that's definitely not how you maintain relationships with Indigenous communities who have every historical reason to be skeptical of government promises. The thing is, this isn't just about oil. It's about process, respect, and understanding that provinces aren't little fiefdoms where neighboring premiers can just draw lines on maps without consultation. BC has coastline. BC has jurisdiction over certain environmental matters. BC has relationships with First Nations that took years to build. You can't just sidestep all of that because Alberta wants better market access for its oil or because Saskatchewan wants to be part of the cool kids energy club. Let's zoom out for a second and look at what's really at stake here. Canada is trying to thread an impossibly thin needle, developing natural resources while transitioning to cleaner energy, respecting Indigenous rights while maintaining economic growth, and balancing provincial interests while keeping the country unified. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while riding a unicycle on a tightrope over Niagara Falls. In a windstorm. During an earthquake. The oil tanker ban on BC's north coast is one of those rare things that seem to work for multiple stakeholders. Environmental groups were satisfied. Coastal First Nations felt heard and protected. BC got to move forward with other projects. Sure, Alberta and Saskatchewan weren't thrilled, but that's Confederation for you. Not everyone gets everything they want all the time. But now we've got secret conversations, surprise announcements, and one very angry BC Premier who's pointing out that you can't build trust by having secret meetings about someone else's backyard. Eby isn't just protecting his political turf here. He's protecting relationships that are fundamental to how BC operates. If coastal First Nations feel betrayed because the federal government weakens the tanker ban after promising it would stay, why would they trust anyone on anything else? Every LNG project, every mining development, every infrastructure plan suddenly becomes questionable. The entire house of cards collapses. And here's where it gets really interesting from a political dynamics perspective. This is federal-provincial relations at their messiest. You've got Danielle Smith pushing hard for Alberta's oil interests, which is her job. You've got Scott Moe trying to stay relevant in the energy conversation even though Saskatchewan doesn't have a coastline, which is ambitious. You've got the federal government apparently entertaining these ideas without properly consulting BC, which is baffling. And you've got David Eby trying to hold together a complex web of agreements while also making sure everyone knows that BC won't be steamrolled by its neighbors. It's also worth noting that this story broke during a time when Eby is dealing with plenty of other challenges: affordability, housing, healthcare, the usual provincial premier starter pack of problems. The last thing he needs is a surprise pipeline proposal threatening to unravel years of relationship building with Indigenous communities. It's like juggling flaming torches and someone tosses you a chainsaw without warning. So where do we go from here? Well, Eby's made his position crystal clear. No secret conversations about BC without BC at the table, and no messing with the tanker ban without understanding what's at stake. Whether Ottawa, Alberta, and Saskatchewan actually listen remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, this story is far from over. The drama is just getting started, and we'll be here to cover every twist, turn, and political body slam. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Canadian political chaos, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We're dropping content daily because Canadian politics never sleeps, and neither do we. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Should provinces be able to veto pipeline plans that affect their territory? Is Eby overreacting, or is this a legitimate threat to BC's development strategy? Let's talk about it. Thanks for watching Canadian Insights. Stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, in Canadian politics, the real drama happens when everyone thinks the cameras are off.